want to go through a few quick house rules, and then I will introduce our trainer, and then we can begin the webinar. So as we're going through the webinar, please keep your microphones on mute. And in case you're having connectivity issues and your video is on, I recommend you also switch off your video to save you the data. We're also going to be recording the webinar, and we will share the presentation slides after. For those who will have any questions to ask, we will save all questions for the end. And for those whose microphones are not working, you can always type your questions in the chat option, and then I will read them out, and then Angela can answer them for you. So yeah, those are the house rules. So please keep in mind to put your microphones on mute as Angela is presenting. So for those of you who don't know Angela, Angela is the director of Tiranjani Africa, which is a tourism consultancy business. And the main aim of the business is to develop sustainable, inclusive models and contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. Angela has over 12 years experience in the tourism industry, and she's actively involved in product development, sales, and marketing. She's very passionate about sustainable tourism, and she strongly believes that sustainability can be achieved through social inclusivity and also environmental consciousness. So we're very excited to have Angela with us, and she can share her expertise on how we can better manage our businesses through this tough time. And communication is key during this time, especially on how you communicate to your partners, to your customers, and to retain them, and also to reassure them that you're still here for them, and that your business is still ready once COVID is over. So Angela, I'll pass on to you. You can begin the webinar now.
Thank you, Caroline. I hope everybody can hear me loud and clear. Sometimes technology is not so good. As Caroline has said, my name is Angela Nje here, and I'll be taking you through a short presentation on what you can be doing as a business communication, as well as maybe just to look at what sort of strategy would you be looking at as a business when it comes to communication. So we'll start off by something that I picked up on the internet, yeah? Communication is the cornerstone of any organization's success. It's even more important in times of crisis. And that clearly speaks going through for the past couple of weeks now. For the tourism industry, it's obviously more hard hit because our core business basically has stopped. As Caroline was introducing me, I was thinking, for 12 years plus, I have been in operations, yeah? And this should be one of the hardest times, because speaking on experience, every time we've had either something like elections or a terrorism attack, then that's when we have crisis problems, but we've never really developed a crisis mitigation plan for a pandemic, yeah? So this is obviously something that needs us all to think differently in different spaces and what we can do. So today we'll be going through a few steps that we all can possibly implement. I have tried to make it less textbook centric and more practical, something that is easily done, because when we move into the textbook context of developing a communication strategy, then it could be a bit complex. And right now, everybody's thinking, how do I survive? How do I make my business relevant? So we'll be looking at number one, just understanding the background of communication. And then, because we are obviously in the crisis of Corona, we will look at the 4 phases of coronavirus and how this can help us, guide us through planning our strategy. And then we can look at the planning process through the crisis, and then look at what effective and non-effective communication can be, and then look at how we'll develop the communication strategy, and then obviously how we will craft our communication and our messages. So to start us off, as I was busy researching, because I'm also in the tourism industry as my consultant, one of the things that stood out was, or I kept on asking myself, is how do I keep the reputation of my business now in a point where basically everyone's struggling, yeah? So I looked at this and I'll read it out, yeah? A business crisis is inherently abnormal, unstable, and complex situation that represents a threat to the strategic objectives, reputation, or existence of an organization. And if you look at that, basically, it represents a threat, yeah? And we all now know that it is a threat to all of us, yeah? So, as I said, when we're looking at the background of what is communication, Wikipedia gives us that description that is on the screens. But basically, communication can be put in 3 steps: what you want to communicate, how you communicate it, and then is it well received, is it well understood? Because for effective communication to happen, and as we'll see later on, is that the message needs to be reached, delivered, and then also understood. Yeah, that is what you would call effective communication. So when we talk about communication in the tourism context or any business at this point, we are looking at both internal communication and external communication. And this is communication. Internal communication is communication within the company. How do you communicate what's happening with the staff? Because the last 1 month, all of us had to deal with crisis management, yeah? Speaking to most of you who are online right now, most of you said, Angela, right now we are dealing with a crisis plan. Do we let go of staff? Do we reduce staff? Do we cut their salaries? Do we put them on unpaid leave? So that is something in the beginning we would probably have created if we didn't have one. Like in case of a crisis, how do we communicate within our staff? How do we pass this message to them? Because remember, after the crisis, we will still need our staff back. We will still need them to give their full, give their wholesome. We will need them to be there and be loyal, because we always say in businesses, your most valued asset is your staff. So it is important to look at how you communicate with the staff. And then the other thing is the external communication. How do you communicate out? How do you speak to your supply chain, industry stakeholders, your peers? How do you make yourselves relevant in this space where everybody is now fighting to remain relevant? So, background, what are the objectives of communication? To inform, to advise, to order, to suggest, persuade, educate, warn someone, raise morale, motivate. Those are the key objectives of communication. And then in turn, if you turn it around and you're looking at what are the elements of communication, you communicate to motivate, you communicate to, what are the elements of that communication? So you will have a sender, you'll have a message, you'll have the media, you'll have the channel you're using, you will have the receiver. The noise in this instance talks about the barriers, refers to the barriers, because once you're communicating, there's always a barrier. For example, now I'm communicating to you guys. There could be an internet barrier and some of you don't hear us, or there could be noise in the background, literally physical noise, yeah? Then of course there's the distortion, what you seem to hear, what you perceive to hear, and then there's the feedback after what you have received as the communication. So basically, what are when we speak about the background of communication, what really forms communication? So sitting down, I looked at the 6 C's of communication. Number 1 is clarity. Whatever message you're passing needs to be very clear. And clarity means A, of thought, and B, of expression. What it means of thought and of expression, I should have put a T there. But what it means of thought is that what I'm thinking and what I express, how does it relate to each other? Yeah, because I can think of something and then how it comes out of my mouth is not what it is. For example, this webinar we are doing right now, there's a way I had it planned in my head, and possibly what I'm telling you is very different. So that way of expression has to account for in the first C of communication through clarity. You have to make sure you come out clear. Then you can see the other three, the other five. And one I think right now that is very key is correctness. Yeah. You've got to be correct with the information you're sharing. Yeah. You've got to look at things like courtesy. Yeah. Because for example, in Kenya, our main products, we always talk about the wildlife, talk about the beach, but how does it feel when somebody is thinking of Corona and you're busy telling them, come and see the migration? Yeah. So you have to look at ways of how you communicate that person understands that you're selling it, but you don't want to look like you're also throwing it down someone's throat. Moving on, I think I spoke about after the background of communication. We have looked at the 6 C's and we've understood what communication is. But once Corona came out, yeah, I picked up this, what are the 4 phases of coronavirus? Because for you to effectively communicate, you need to have planned your communication. But there's phases of this pandemic that we need to plan through. You know how we sit and say this is high season, this is this is peak season, this is green season, there's Easter coming, there's Christmas coming. How we sit down and arrange our rates, it is the same thing. Yeah. When it comes to this coronavirus, there's 4 phases. The first phase is awaiting the major impacts. The second phase is withstanding the initial impact. The third phase is returning to normalcy. And the fourth is sorting out the new industry dynamics. So once we understand that there's already the 4 phases, yeah? So the first phase talks about the economic rapidly shutting, you looking for ways to survive, saying, I have this much money, it will last me for this period, I can cut down on this. You're still waiting for the major impacts. So that's phase 1. And I think in Africa, we are being told we're still around between phase 1 and phase 2, because then phase 2, this is where we will see, we've started seeing the numbers. Every day we're being read for the numbers are increasing in Africa. Yeah. If it hasn't happened, one of those numbers sadly could be your staff. It could be you. It could be someone. Yeah. And through this period, yeah, businesses will run out of money. We struggle to operate. We're already struggling to see that. Illnesses, So that's another phase. And then after that phase, then you will have the returning to normalcy. When we start opening up. For countries or regions that Corona started earlier, if you look at the context of South Korea, for them, they've started to open up slowly. They're already moving through the phases. So we're also about to transition into the returning to normalcy. And this is where business will start to pick up. Yeah. And then once we get into that phase, we'll realize that industry dynamics have changed. One of the industry dynamics that tourism is looking at right now is the possibility of change of markets. If you used to focus on the European travelers, yeah, as your key travelers or imports, now we are saying that one of the shifts is that people will want to gradually transition into traveling to destinations closer to home. That means if I live in Nairobi, I'll probably start with Naivasha, then move into Mombasa, then later move into going to, say, Ghana, Accra, because it's regional, yeah? I won't move directly from here to Europe, and adversely the same. So if your focus was on international markets. Now, what does that mean for you? Yeah, you have to start now sorting out those new industry dynamics. And because we are developing a communication strategy, you need to have played out all this in these scenarios into your planning. Yeah. Effective business communication is essential for success and growth of every organization. Unlike everyday communications, business communication is always goal-oriented. I should have highlighted goal-oriented because when you're building a communication strategy, you've understood the background of the communication, you've understood that this pandemic is going to go into phases, and that means it won't be business as usual. Obviously, we're already experiencing that. Then, what are your goals? That's the question you need to ask yourself. So what will be my goals in this communication? Because bottom line, at the end of the day, I need to survive and I need my business to still be relevant in the market space because I'm here to make money. That's why we're all in business. So through this part, planning in the crisis and planning in the normal situation is very different. In the normal situation, you already know my target market is Scandinavia. My target market is demographics. I am looking at the millennials and the families. You already have that. But now we are saying that there's a crisis. We already know that there's gonna markets will go. I hope you can all hear me. So how do you know what is right, what is wrong? And that is why I said I will introduce the uncertainty matrix. And you can see in the first square, you have your known knowns. Then in B, you have your unknown knowns. Then C, you have your known unknowns. And then D is the most scariest because these are the unknown knowns. You don't even know that you know them. You don't even know that you don't know the unknown, yeah? So basically what it means, yeah? In A, this is where you put in what you seem to think are the truths of your business, yeah? What do you know that is gonna happen in the tourism sector, yeah? What is it you know that for sure this is gonna happen? Then the unknown knowns. In this quadrant, we look at what the outside knows that we don't know, yeah? Because there's something that in an age of internet, everybody now working, you know, there's somebody who's going to know something that you don't know, yeah? So that's the unknown known. They already know it, but you don't know it. Then you've got the known unknowns, yeah? And this is where you use, you know, the phases that we were just talking about, yeah? You look at what is going to be the market demand, business model, operation capabilities, you know, regulatory risks. What these are the known unknowns. Yeah, you can almost think, okay, so this is what's going to happen. And then there are known unknowns, like I said, this is now where you start thinking of scenario A could be this, scenario B could be that. Why you're using the uncertainty matrix, if I go back, because once you're able to clarify and know in these boxes, because for every business, it's different. What it is for Chiranjani is not what will be for Caroline. She trades the Commonwealth program. So my knowns are different. And then unknowns are different as well. So that is why you need to use the uncertainty matrix to be able to determine, using the phases, what it is you're certain of and what you're not. Yeah. So then it is important as leaders to check what is referred to as our human dashboard, also known as your mood elevator. I want to pause there before I continue reading the rest of that phrase. The reason why I say that is because we're talking about having to deal with communication with your staff. Now, you're the owner of the business. You're already having to face certain uncertainties, yeah? Certain insecurities. Your business could be going under, yeah? How do you deal with that? And sometimes you can actually pass on that information to the staff and even the remaining staff, and whatever little loyalty they had to you, or whatever little drive that they felt on, let's carry on developing content for our company. It kills them. I'll give you an example here. You're walking into the office and you say, okay, well, maybe not in the office because everybody now is working from home. But for the ones who still have the skeleton, human power, human labor, you can walk in and you say something like, why, you guys, have you had other companies are putting people on unpaid leave? Because you're giving your staff 50%. You're almost sending a threat to them without you realizing you're doing it, yeah? Because you've walked in and said, have you had tour operator ABC has sent people on unpaid leave? And they're sitting there and thinking, oh gosh, are we the next one to go on unpaid leave? Or, oh gosh, are we the next ones to be fired? So going back to that phrase, yeah, it is important as leaders to check what is referred to a human dashboard, also known as our mood elevator. It is our own self-awareness of how we are doing emotionally. It can be easy to react instead of respond. And then we regret what we've said or done. Now, this is the thing. You have to be so critical as a leader now, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, on what you say, because you can either respond or react. Yeah. So that's why they say you also have to weigh when you're developing your content. You have seen moving a bit out of context. You have seen how artists act. Yeah, they'll tell you, I don't have that feeling right now. But once it kicks in, they can go and write something. It is the same thing. If you know you're facing a hard time, you've probably come from speaking to your financial advisors and they're saying you need to cut off. Maybe that's not the right time to bring up what other agents say are doing when you're having a Skype conversation with your staff, because you don't know how they will react. Yeah. So moving on, this is an example for the Kenyan entrepreneurs of this webinar. We all woke up to this news yesterday. Communication, yeah? Utalii Hotel closes its doors. And on Twitter, it went ablaze. Facebook, my WhatsApp groups, everybody sending, have you seen this? It's all over in the news, in the major dailies. And then shortly, Utalii sends that on all the social pages. An example of poor communication. Somebody recently said to me, we never tell businesses what they will do or how they will react when things go wrong. We trainers or we consultants always tell them the positive. But I applaud how Utalii reacted, yeah, because this clearly speaks into all these words written, yeah. So planning your communication, I think my internet again is playing up. I think I'm back. Planning your communication is very important. So it is critical for us to look at what is poor or bad communication, yeah? Poor communication can be lack of comprehension. It can be incorrect grammar when you write something and you mean to say something and it doesn't react. I mean, I had clarity of thought instead of thought. So that's one of the things, yeah? It could be poor listening skills, it could be body language, or simply lack of communication. Now, I would like to highlight lack of communication. Having been working in the tourism operations for so long, this is the period we see the most number of tweets. It's the period we see the most number of Facebook posts. We see Instagram pictures of beautiful lodges, beautiful scenery. But now, all of a sudden, everyone's quiet. Lack of communication. If you look at be honest with yourself. When was the last time you put up a Twitter something or a Facebook something or did even a newsletter since when this communication, since this pandemic started? When was the last time you actually sent out something? Because lack of communication still communicates something. And for businesses, when they've been hit by a crisis, we react to the crisis and then freeze. And once you freeze, then it also communicates something, yeah? Communication barriers, like we were talking earlier on, can be lack of attention, perceptions. It can be accredited to different things. It could even be cultural differences. It could be beliefs, what I believe and what you believe, and you're trying to communicate something. So these are things you need to factor in when you develop your communication plan, when you develop your communication strategy. What perception will I be putting up? What view will I be giving people? How do I want these people to react? And what could be the barriers? Yeah. Now let's go back to the phases. Think in terms of the phases, then think in terms of the uncertainty metrics. Think how that operates there, and then see what could be your communication barriers. So there's this question: how do you ensure that your brand remains relevant at a time when travel is associated with grief? So as I take a sip of water, I will play out a video that I want us to look at. I am not the very best at technology, but I will do this. And we can all have a look at this here and see how do you remain relevant? Yeah.
Do you remember when they closed the schools and kids tried to learn online? And when we heard the term social distancing for the very first time?
Sorry.
Do you remember when we worked from home and actually missed when the fun of flying wasn't there for us anymore? But we had to be strong. All of those things we took so much for granted were now this to us every day, walking the park. Remember when we stayed away from the gyms and watched too much TV anymore, except COVID-19? Do you remember when the airlines were grounded, which meant we missed our loved ones even more, but the whole world came together and said enough, no more? Do you remember?
So when we look at that as I walk through technology, do we all see how your brand remains relevant? I looked at that ad from Emirates and I thought, I can see that in the future. They've made me move to the future to imagine what it will be after coronavirus pandemic and the possibility of me using Emirates. So they've crafted it cleverly so that they're putting you in a situation where they're not forcing you. Emirates has the best economy seats. Emirates is based. No, they're actually making you think current situation, current times, what we know and what could be. Yeah. So in times of when brands are quiet, people are not advertising, when you see that from Emirates, you go like, oh, okay, this is nice, you know? So then we move into asking ourselves, what is to communicate effectively? We know what communication is, we know there's phases, we know how we'll plan, but really, what is effective communication? So I summarized this into 4 steps. The first step is gather the facts. What is the situation? What are the components? What are the future implications? Yeah, because you see going back to that advert with Emirates, yeah, and we'll share the links later so that you can look at the ad very well and just put yourself in the position of the person who was actually creating that content. Yeah, they thought of future implications. So this will happen, but people will still come back to travel. So how do I bridge the gap in between there? How do I make them relate to me even after COVID? Then you also have to tell the truth. That's another step for communicating effectively. You've got to work with your team. You've got to work with your reservations team, for example. How do you communicate? Because everybody keeps saying, oh, this is the time to restart. This is the time to reboot. This is the time you can build. But you've got to tell the truth, yeah? Then, of course, we've spoken about planning your communications, and we will look at how you can plan your communications. We've already looked at how you can analyze, and we'll look a bit more further into that. And then, of course, build your communication skills. Communication is a skill, yeah? You look at people who communicate on social media and you go like, wow, did they just do that? So it's something that you learn slowly. It's something that we've been saying. I know with the She Trades team, we have done digital trainings on how do you communicate on social media, how, so it's a skill that you can only build on it. And to tell you the truth, if you had a communication plan before, then it makes it easier for you to actually deal with this crisis now. Because when you're building a communication plan, there's something called a communication crisis strategy. Have we stopped to ask ourselves, should this pandemic affect one of our staff directly? How do we communicate? In worst scenarios, we've seen all over the world people dying, which is sad. How do you communicate? Yeah, you have to think about crisis situations when you're planning. Yeah, right now, one of the possible crises after crisis would probably be defining your communication. You need to have thought about the future. Yeah. So I drafted up, there's so many tips on how you can craft a perfect message. But one of the things is that you need to develop a communication strategy. And like I was just saying now, you need to think short term, which is basically 2 to 3 months. You need to think medium term. You need to think long term. And sometimes long term can actually be up to 5 years. Yeah. Then you need to choose suitable channels. You have to start asking yourself, which is the right space. For example, I saw recently in the news that now people never used to watch paid ads on TV, but now everybody's staying at home. The number of people watching TV has gone up. There's a time that really wasn't like a suitable channel. So you have to start asking yourself. And of course, in terms of our tourism industry, when you say suitable channels, you have to start saying we don't have a budget or we had an emergency budget. So maybe I can use social media and say I'll pay in terms of $5 a day, $5 a week, because you can control your budget. Yeah. Then number 3, you need to interpret and understand your data to know your audience. I don't know how many of us, if you're not doing this, then you want to start right away. We all have websites. We all can get Google Analytics, which are free, courtesy of Google, so that you can know who comes to your website. If you're using Facebook, you're using Twitter, you're using LinkedIn, all these channels actually have a monitoring of data that can actually give you more on who looked at your post, who comes to your website, and that way you learn your audience. Yeah, and you start to develop personas, and you're able to craft and say, okay, so majority of the people who have been coming to my website are from this region. So how do I approach it? And for example, majority of the people who've been coming have been the, say, European market. So how will I counteract that? After the European market, who's my number two? So who is most likely going to buy my packages? Yeah. Then of course you need to develop a social media calendar. We all know social media is like the key place. At this point, I'd like to recommend HubSpot.com. If you go on to HubSpot.com, you can get a free social media calendar, which they're actually giving out for free. And it can help you to plan your social media and say, I'll post this day, and it picks it up with the dates. So it makes it quite easy for you, and it's easy to use. Yeah, it's more like a spreadsheet. So it makes it much easier for you to use. Then, of course, you've got to use the 6C when we spoke about the of communication. Clear? Is it message concise? Is this message, correct? Yeah. And then of course, timing. The reason why I say timing is because sometimes information can be irritation. Because I saw when the talk in tourism started saying, oh, we'll see more domestic travelers, we'll see more regional tourism, I saw companies go up with domestic offer for Easter. And then we were told, for example, in Nairobi, it's locked down. So sometimes information can be irritation. And going back to the advert that, the Emirates advert, you need to now craft and ask yourself, the future, what we've basically been carving through. So what is the communication strategy? Yeah, it's a critical piece bridging the situation. You look at the analysis, you look at the social and behavioral change, and then you literally write it down. And that's why I said here, you can look at the HubSpot calendar, because you lie to yourself and say, I will post on Facebook on Thursday. But unless it's in your calendar, then you won't remember what you needed to post. And it needs to be able to work with the current situation, yeah? So then, of course, effective communication strategies use a systematic process and behavioral theory to design and implement. So that means you need to sit, analyze, am I changing my products? Am I changing my target market? Am I going to be doing only travel? Am I going to focus on tours alone? Am I, you need to look at that. It has to be a systematic process. And then now match it to the current situation. Look and use the tools that we've spoken about, the uncertainty metrics, the phases of Corona, how they will affect our business, and how we can actually use what we know and what we think we know to build us that calendar. So the 10 steps of a communication strategy. Number 1, develop a brand statement of purpose. Why are you running your business? Every time I talk about sustainability, the first thing I always ask people is, what's your philosophy? What do you want to be known for? Now we've already seen that, and we know that tourism is going to change. We know that customer behavior is going to change. We know that we won't get our immediate travelers, yeah, like we used to in 2019. The number's going to change. So what's your statement of purpose? What do you want to be known of? What do you want people to see and know? Yeah, that this is that person. Yeah. So again, in identifying your current situation, you can use these 3 analyses. The first is the PEST analysis, where you look at political, economic, social, and technological factors. Then you can list them down and say, okay, for example, when you're doing your packages and you want to now start pricing, economic factors. If your target market is the domestic market and you've been offering adventure travel for the domestic market, how are you going to price it? Because The middle class, maybe most of them have lost their jobs. Yeah, most of them have had reduced pays. So if that was your target market, how are you going to customize your pricing? How are you going to develop your pricing strategy? Yeah. So then you can use the pest analysis. Then you also want to use the SWOT together with the uncertainty matrix that we spoke about. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities? Then the other one is competitor analysis. When I speak to businesses, this is what I find very interesting. We all think highly of ourselves, but when you're talking about wanting to be real, you want to be honest with yourself when we're doing the competitor analysis. Why do you want to be honest with yourself? Because this is what will take you to the next level. I can sit here and say Tiranjani is the best consultancy company. Is it? Who's my competitor? How do my competitors think? And then sometimes they say it's what? Thinking smart that gets you to the next level. Sometimes not thinking so hard or working so hard. It's just thinking smart. Yeah. So you need to do a competitor analysis. All of us are going to be restarting. Everybody's going to be developing new products. Everybody's going to be wanting to be the best at their top game. So what are the rest going to do? You want to think of that right now. You want to imagine, you know, tour operator BCD has been developing packages for adventure, for example, and they've been doing cycling. So they're probably cycling for the domestic market. Now, what else can you offer that's not that? That's what I mean by competitor analysis. Yeah, it may not be 100%, but we all know each other. So you want to give yourself something, that unique selling point. Yeah, you need to have a proper USP. You need to have a proper prepositioning. Yeah, you need to be able to say, this is what makes me me. Yeah. So basically right now we are saying, if you're spreading out and you're planning this, I go back to my steps. Step 1, uncertainty matrix. Number 2, paper 2, you have pest analysis. Step 3, you've done your SWOT. And 4, you have your competitor analysis. Then of course you need to identify your business objectives and communication objectives. Yes, one of the objectives is we all want to make money, but it's got to be richer than that. In sustainability, we always talk about, before you think about the profits, you've got to think about the people and the planet. Now, one of the biggest trends that's happening right now is sustainability. One of the biggest talks is that, look at what Corona has done, the impact. What is the impact to the environment? Another question we want to ask ourselves is, what is the impact of Corona to the local communities where we practice our tourism? What business objectives, communication objectives can we now build upon that actually fits into this sustainability garment? Yeah, because we want to build a smart tourism industry. Yeah, one that already has planned out all these crises that could be coming or that could have come, you know. So we thought out the future. That's what basically sustainability thinks, yeah? Future proofing for tomorrow. So it's the same thing even with your business objectives and your communications objectives. So when you're developing your strategy, you want your communications to match into your business strategy. That is why you have to identify your business objectives and you have to identify your communications objectives. The third one, again, I spoke about this before. And I said, when you're crafting a message, you need to develop customer personas. You need to have looked at your data. You need the current one that you have right now is your website, your social media platforms, maybe your customer base. If you have a database of the clients that used to come in, if you have a newsletter that you used to do. So those are some of the things that you can actually use to develop your customer personas. Then you can also determine what you want the world to know. I think we spoke about this also in number 1. Choose the channels you will be using. message matrix. What message do you want to pass on? And I think I spoke about goal-oriented plans. Yeah, your communications need to have a goal. Then, of course, you can use HubSpot or any other planning, content planning calendars. And you can use this in conjunction with your broader marketing calendar. And lastly, you want to be able to measure your impact. Right now, everybody is on digital, yeah? In normal circumstances, Caroline and I would have you in a room, in a conference room, and we can engage, yeah? But now we are online. Now, the advantage of measuring your impact on the communications, like I said, is that when you post out something on Facebook, when you post out something on Twitter, nowadays you can get the data. How many people viewed your post? You know, what was the reach? You can go further and look at the demographics and see how many male, how many female, what age group. So this will ultimately help you even shape, in reverse, shape your content, yeah? So you'd be thinking that your target usually is honeymoon couples, but the people who are looking at your products are families, yeah? So this would also influence who you would be dealing with in future. So that means when you're looking at restarting and redeveloping your product, then instead of focusing on the couples alone, then you start to develop products for family, yeah? So then there's this question, how do you retain and reassure your customers that you're still the right partner? And how do you win new customers? Because this is something a lot we've been asked. And I'd like to share another video. And this is to bring it to the local context here in Africa, yeah? For the Kenyans, I think you have probably seen this a lot. Just a moment. Let me bring this up, just a moment.
To behave normally. This disease will treat us abnormally.
So how do you keep your brand there?
Do you need to buy a phone or a laptop? You are not sure if we're getting a good deal or about to buy something fake?
Just a
True,
moment.
there are a lot of counterfeit electronics and phones on the streets, but
That's an example of bad technology. Yeah. But going back to what I was saying, yeah, as we navigate back to our screen, when you ask yourself, just a moment, when you ask yourself, what is the right communication? How do I come through right now, yeah, with what I'm trying to say with my communication, yeah? How do I come out for people to not look at me as somebody who is taking advantage of the scenario? You have to really craft your message correctly, because I like how Safaricom comes of the African listeners, their communications brand up to, but people will see and they'll remember that Safaricom still exists. So for
Hi,
tourism,
Angela.
like I challenged, hi.
Could you just repeat from, you like how Safaricom did something and then the internet went fuzzy?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So like I was saying, if you look at how Safaricom build their adverts, yeah, they don't have to say Safaricom is the best communications company. Safaricom is they actually look at a very smart way of bringing out their message. Yeah? So they've told you what is current, stay at home. They've told you take care. They have looked at the care workers and made them feel like they care. Yeah. And you remember when we spoke about what is your statement of purpose? Statement of purpose for Safaricom usually is what? Safaricom cares. Yeah. So through the advert, you can see them touching on the care workers. You can see them touching on the elderly. You can see them touching on, you know, the message that the government is giving us. And the message comes in the end very clearly. I don't have to see it, but as much as they're telling me stay at home, in my brain, Safaricom cares. So when you're crafting your message, yeah, just going back to what we were saying, reassuring your customers you're still the right partner. We don't want to be there just putting out our data, putting it out, you know, strongly saying package, 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 cost. You know, I had the best Land Cruiser. No, you don't have to do that. You just need to look at a smart way of actually crafting your message. So reading this, a brand's relationship, this is something that Tammy was asked on an interview by CNBC, and I thought this is quite interesting, yeah? A brand's relationship with its customers is always important, but it has never been more critical than it is today in circumstances like this, which are frightening, uncertain, rapidly changing. Clarity and reassurance is demanded. And I highlight clarity and reassurance is demanded. And just going back to that Safaricom ad, yeah, you can see how the reassurance they give us, yeah. So at the end of the day, the message will stick that Safaricom cares, yeah, which is what they want us to do. So in ending, really, our words, or rather, let me say, our parting shots as Tia and Johnny is that for the tourism industry, number one, we need to communicate consistently. We need to stop the no communicating now. Number two, we have to demonstrate our human side. We have to look at really what's our, can you hear me, Caroline?
Yes, very clearly.
Good. So we need to look at that human side. We need to embrace online platforms because we can also get the data. We need to be honest, transparent. And even when you're communicating with your remaining staff, if you still have some, you need to ask yourself, or even say, I have no idea how this works. How will it work? Yeah. I'm not very good at online platforms. I do better with, you know, face to face, but I have to learn, I have to adopt, yeah? So we have to adopt as well. Then we also have to keep it light. Don't make your communications too heavy. I see people going in with newsletters that look like case studies with paragraphs and paragraphs on. You want to keep it very light, keep it focused, give positives. When you're busy saying travel tomorrow, give them a reason to travel tomorrow. Think of what Emirates did, yeah? Do you remember? Think of why do you want them to remember your brand, yeah? How can they relate to your brand, yeah? And the last thing, you need to leverage on your leadership. You need to be reliable and compassionate. This is both for internal and external. So, would like to leave it there. I think our time is up. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. If you need any help, send me an email, send me a shout. Let's see how we can work through together because we're in this together. And tourism is our business, so let's make it our business to prove that tourism is a resilient. Over to you, Caroline.
Thank you so much, Angela. That was very, very good. And we hope that we can build on this to have more examples on good messaging and bad messaging, things like that. So one of the questions Barbara has is, should we now focus more on emotional messaging? Because most of the examples you showed, for instance, with Emirates and with Safaricom, it had a very human touch to it rather than a company's touch. So should that be kind of the focus that businesses should take?
I think right now it's a time when everybody's not thinking of anything else other than survival. It's about humanity. It's about the survival of humanity. And if you can appeal to the emotional side when you're doing your communication, then somebody will relate to it. I think at the end of the day, one of the things you want to really bring forth is, like Safaricom says, Safaricom cares, yeah? So they don't have to force that in my head. Just seeing them talking about the care workers makes me think, yeah. The other day, I saw the Australian High Commission in Kenya actually do a video of them applauding the care workers in Kenya. And I sat and I thought, oh, tourism, have we applauded anyone for what they're doing to save us? Food for thought. Back to you.
That is definitely some food for thought. I haven't seen anyone do that in the tourism sector yet. And also, I would like to open the floor to more questions. So Agnes is asking if there are any models to use for your competitor analysis.
I think that there are textbook models for competitor analysis, definitely. However, I usually like to make it, having been somebody who's worked in operations, there's nobody who understands your competitors more than you do, yeah? Because one of the key things is that you already know where you lie in the market, yeah? When we come in, we already segment ourselves and we say, oh, those are the big players, you know, those are the big fish. Then here I am, a middle fish. Honestly, the right competitor analysis, we could do the different textbook competitor analysis, but the best really is what you do, yeah? What do you understand from your current situation? For example, if you ask me, how does Tiaranjani compare to the rest of the consultants? I should be able to give something, you know, to be, what is it called? I need to be very genuine with myself, you know? No pun intended for the women. We all know now, staying in the house, yeah, out of context, we are snatching and doing all these things. So you know the possibility is not, is like looking like a model, you know, as statue model, what really looks like may not be that in my case, yeah? I'm taking as Angela as the example here. But I want to sit and say, oh, you know, I look like Naomi Campbell. No, I don't, yeah? So competitor analysis, you have to be very genuine with yourself. How do I look now? What do I want to look like, yeah? And how will I appeal to that market? But definitely there are textbook competitor analysis schemes that you can use. Caroline?
Thank you so much. Let's see other questions. Okay, so Barbara just had a comment saying that Safaricom are using the same scheme they already had, but they adopted it to the new context. So that's something to think about, using what we already have and just adapting it to the new situations we're facing. So if you don't have time to start afresh, you can use what you have now and then build on the new models that Angela was discussing. Does anyone have any questions for Angela? Would you like to unmute your mic and ask? Okay, it seems not. Well, we're going to be providing the recording and the links. Oh, I think Francisca has a question. Okay, no, there was another comment.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Is there a time when actually not communicating can be the best cause of, for example, during a crisis and your organization is right in the middle of the crisis, and there is a fear that if you communicate, it will actually create more noise? Is there a time when it's better to just be quiet for a while until the emotions go down and then communicate?
Hi. So I think when I was explaining good communication and bad communication, I said also lack of communication can be taken as communication. So usually when you have a crisis and then you keep quiet and you're waiting for emotions to go down, then somebody on the other side can look at it as you don't care. Yeah. So by the time you're actually even coming back to communicate, then it looks like, oh yeah, you only communicated now because, you know, we made too much noise. Yeah. So sometimes in such a scenario, it's good to acknowledge if you're in the middle of the crisis or you're in the middle of the problem, just acknowledge and make it very, can I say, very on a straight line. I'm trying to look for the correct word, yeah? So that you can actually not look like you're not listening. Yeah? So you can actually buy time for emotions to calm down by just saying, we acknowledge this and we will get back to you. Yeah? Because I think we've also seen these scenarios, bringing it now to operations where you have a client also complaining. Forget Corona. You have a client complaining about something and you also want to investigate. If you're a tour operator and they're talking about something that happened in the field, you want to find out what is the version. You need to investigate. So the right thing to do would be acknowledge. Yeah, find courteous words to acknowledge what they're saying. You don't say yes, you don't say no, but just courteous words to use the 6 C's in this scenario. Yeah, and then give it time when they know you've heard and you're acknowledging. Give it time. Then now, after of course emotions have gone down, then you go back. And now this again plays into what we were talking about, emotional intelligence. Yeah, because sometimes even going to react or communicate can cause, you remember what we said, it can be not information, it can be an irritation, or it can also be not like people will not embrace it. Yeah, so it's better to sometimes just acknowledge, make sure you use a very normal line, don't give any sentiment of positive like I agree or I don't agree. Yeah, but make them know you have heard.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Angela?
Hi, can I ask a question, please?
Please go ahead.
Okay, I want to narrow down the tourism industry to just basically a travel agency. You don't do anything with tours. You just sell tickets. That's tickets, people walking in, and maybe to corporates. And it was more or less corporates with the credit facility. So now international borders have been closed. So meaning office business is closed. You're communicating to your existing customers. How do you communicate to them? Okay, you're using WhatsApp. Hello, madam. How do you communicate to them? You know, and your companies. What do you tell them? Because in such a situation, I'm lost. Is it hello? How are you? And this situation, I know it's affecting all of us. Definitely things will change. My company is always there for you. And how about the scenario where unfortunately some of these companies still owe you? How do you communicate to them? Because then it'll be like in tough times, you know they owe. Do you go directly to them and say, okay, I'm just checking up on you, but I want to remind of you of this outstanding amount that you are yet to pay? Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying 101%, yeah? Moving to the travel agents and moving out the tourism aspect, which mostly they pay upfront, yeah? Travel, of course, pays afterwards. But here is a scenario for a client who you've just said, yeah, that owes you, and you're communicating on WhatsApp, and they know that travel has stopped. You know what I would do? Probably do you have any old pictures of your office that you've taken, maybe a picture with your staff? I would take that, create a poster and say, you know, like how Emirates say, do you remember?
Yeah.
And then I'd send something saying, remember, or we will cater for your needs. And then use that poster and send an email politely asking, you know, like you want to make them feel that because you've not paid me, I have stuff to pay and I have bills, you see? So you're playing into the emotions, yeah?
Yes.
Because now they'll look at it and think, oh yeah, have people, and I still need to pay.
Yeah.
So it's crafty, but then again, that's communication, because at the end of the day, we're in business to make money, yeah? So it's again thinking out the situation and looking at how you can appeal to them without pissing them off.
Yes,
yeah?
yes, yeah. Great,
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Would anyone else like to ask a question? Actually, I see a few on the chat. So from Tina, she's asking, after sharing alternatives to clients to reschedule their tours and services in order to avoid cancellation and cancellation fees, clients still decide to take their money paid towards a service or tour. Are you right to still go ahead and charge them a cancellation fee, or should you be more empathetic by waiving off the cancellation fees?
Just a moment, I'm taking it in, yeah? So after sharing alternatives to clients to reschedule the tours, and clients still decide to take their monies paid towards a service or a tour, are you right to still go ahead and charge them cancellation fees? Well, I think this depends, having been in operations, I think this depends with your policies, yeah? Because if you had communicated it to them before that the cancellation period is this much, then you can keep it. If you're a tour operator that does not own the property and you cannot decide the way forward, then if you're a tour operator that owns the property that you're selling towards the tour and you've actually not gone at any loss, then you don't have to charge them. So I think that this really depends on the terms given, because I know there are properties that were not going to listen to last minute cancellations. So they were still charging cancellation fees. So you as a tour operator, you're not going to waive that off. Yeah, because if you waive it off, then it will come off your pocket. If it is your property, on the other hand, and you're not losing anything, then you can waive it off. So I think it depends with the circumstance. It also depends with the policies. And that's why I said, you remember when we were talking about developing a communication strategy henceforth? Most of the tourism companies, having been in operations, we don't develop a written communication plan or a crisis plan. Yeah. So when these things happen, then boom, you're hit with all this problem. But I think in this circumstance, Tina Roth, that it depends with what the terms were before. Can you absorb it? Can you not absorb? At the end of the day, remember, you are in business, yeah? So if you can, and it will not affect your business, then you can waive off. Caroline?
Yes, I was also just scanning through the other comments. Also, Francisca is asking, she specializes in experiential products. So how can you communicate on that? Since it's quite different from, for instance, with ticketing.
Luckily, I know Francisca, and I'll say, when you look at experiential products, yeah, for example, you're looking at transports. I am sure you had probably taken pictures of your transport vehicles. Why don't you try and create, there's those e-videos where you take pictures and you create, you try and make like a virtual imagination of what your product offers, yeah? And you can actually send that. And this can work for both B2B or B2C. So if I'm a tour operator who used to take or hire your vehicles, then you need to be able to build maybe a video with your vehicles, Francesca, and then just give people something, you know? I'm trying to remember the name of the social site, the app, that you can take pictures, combine, and then make a short video about it and send it out. Yeah, so you'll still be creating an experience by showing them what you offer. Over to you.
Okay, Francisca, I hope that was helpful for you. It's very innovative and creative as well to continue showing off the products and services in a way that is easy for the clients to engage with. And I see that Carol also has a question on what to do with service fee or commissions, and do you refund these when a client cancels? How should you handle this?
Carol, I think this now depends on your pricing strategy, yeah? When you're refunding your service fee and commissions, and did you communicate that those were separate to the client, or did you not, yeah? And then again, now this plays into your broader business strategy, yeah? Because when you're building a business strategy, you look at pricing, you look at communications, marketing, product development, you look at all of that, yeah? So when we speak about refunds, if you refund your service fee, will you have made anything? No, I don't think so. Yeah, but did you communicate it to the client? Yeah, then commissions earned. I'm thinking commissions earned is probably from the hotel side mostly, or the lodges or the products. So again, did you sell the product? Do you keep it? Do you not? Yeah. So I think now this basically depends on your business strategy. What is your business strategy? What is your pricing strategy? And are you making anything out of it? Yeah, because bottom line, you also need to survive as a business. Caroline?
Thank you so much, Angela. I'll have a question for you. So since a lot of the questions have been related to communications based on, and they link to the business strategy, so is it better first to redesign the business strategy so that all these components are integrated into it, so that by the time you're facing a crisis, you already have something to rely on? Or is it case by case?
I think one of the positives that this pandemic has given us is that each one of us has an opportunity to restart. What I mean by restart, I basically mean from philosophy. What do you want your company to be known for? That means that you're starting from building your business strategy. As we have seen the trends, yeah, we already know there's going to be a shift there's going to be a paradigm shift of customer behavior. Who's your target market? What will they want? Yeah. What sort of products will attract people? So that means basically all of us right now, if you're not selling tours, if you're not responding to inquiries, you should be building your business strategy. Because think of it this way, yeah? Each one of us in this webinar, we're about 53. Those are 53 companies, all in tourism industry. Each one of us will want a piece of the pie. The question is, what will make you different so that you can get that piece? Yeah. So if you're coming back with the same itineraries that you used to offer, if you're coming back with the same responses for travel, for example, you're in air travel, we've got the lady asking about air travel, and you usually go back with 2 responses. I want a flight from Nairobi to Dubai, and you go with, here is Emirates, here is this. Now you need to be thinking, how are you going to be crafting your responses that as much as you're giving the usual options of the flight, but you're also giving something extra. It could be from now henceforth, every product I offer will have travel insurance. Yeah. Can I make money out of travel insurance? Yeah. If you look at it from the Kenyan perspective, you have flying doctors, for example, yeah, AMREF, who offer the evacuation cover. And I think the evacuation cover is like $5. So how about now thinking for every package I create, I will now introduce the evacuation cover that I never used to, you know? So you need to start thinking, Caroline, from what is my business strategy? What is my philosophy? What is my business strategy? How is my business model sustainable? Is it considerate of tomorrow? Number 2, what is going to be my communication plan? How will I meet that market? How will I, entice this new market? How will my product fit the needs of this new customer behavior that people are talking about? So basically, it is a time to restart. It is a time for you to consider, what can I do more? But I think the call really is for us to think, how can we promote responsible tourism and travel? Yeah, us who are here in this webinar, 53 of us, each one of us, what can we say that from now henceforth, when I'm running my operations, I will be contributing this to the local communities, I will be contributing that to the environment, through the products that I offer. Yeah. So for all of us who used to say, I'm in the middle of peak season, I'm in the middle of, this season, or there's Easter coming, there's Christmas coming, you've actually been given a time to think, how do I make my products stand out? And how do I make my products stand out responsibly? How do I contribute to this tourism industry responsibly? Yeah. So Caroline, to answer your question, I think we can't say it will be business as usual. It will never be business as usual again. Yeah, that's a certain. Yeah, you remember the uncertainty matrix? That's a certain. It will never be business as usual. And number 2, what opportunity do I have in rebuilding my strategy? How do I start to make a difference? Yeah, everybody is talking about sustainable tourism. How am I contributing to this sustainable tourism? How am I making a difference? And most of all, how am I future-proofing tourism industry? Over to you, Caroline.
Thank you so much, Angela. You've definitely given us a lot of food for thought. So I'm going to end the webinar now. And we're going to be sending the recording and the presentation slides to you. In the presentation slides, you'll have Angela's contacts. So if you want to ask her any more questions or follow up with her, please feel free to reach out to her directly. So I'm going to just say firstly, thank you so much for the time that you've taken to do the training with us. And we really appreciate and are happy of your commitment to this. Yeah, and also thank you so much, Angela, for your expertise and for providing us this platform and training. It's really helpful.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you everyone for tuning in. And we do look forward to having you in the next series.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
All right, bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye, everyone.